Welcome to Overprescribed, the show that raises America's awareness on pharmaceutical medications, all in an effort to help you, the everyday consumer, to live the safest, healthiest, and most informed medication experience possible. I'm your host, Mika Pollock, and you're listening to episode number 19. Recently, I came across a list of pet peeves that some retail pharmacists may have with regards to their jobs, particularly as it relates to interacting with customers, insurance providers, and even each other on a daily basis. Now, when it comes to the over 300,000 pharmacists in this country, dispensing over 4 billion prescriptions annually, representing an over $200 billion pharmacy industry, these folks tend to work in critical roles serving us consumers. And after reading these pet peeves, I have to say that it's quite clear that the job is very demanding and quite stressful. Now, after reading more than one of these pet peeves lists from pharmacytimes.com, it left me wondering, can pharmacists and consumers coexist peacefully so that all is fair in love and pills? Well, I think a first start is in sharing with my wide audience of consumer listeners what some pharmacists consider to be some of the most annoying, possibly even most pestering parts of their job, and how consumers may be able to help just a little bit with relieving some of those stressors. Okay, after reading more than one of these pet peeves lists from the same website, here's my top 10 list of what I consider, based on the pet peeve shared by retail pharmacists, to be the most standout pet peeves that retail pharmacists tend to have. Number 10. I call this freebies. According to pharmacytimes.com, some pharmacists find it a little bit annoying when patients ask for free pills to get them through a vacation, or if patients even ask for a loan of pills. Now, I've never been on that side to ask my pharmacist those questions, but clearly it happens, and it made the list for sure, and it stood out to me. Number 9, stop using your phone. That's right. Retail pharmacists also find that when it comes to patients who won't get off their phones while the pharmacist is trying to talk with you or trying to give you your prescriptions, that can be quite annoying. Not a shocker there. How about number 8? Number 8, I'm calling the penny pinchers. So apparently, when patients ask if any of the pharmacy's competitors sell the same pills at a more discount price, or when patients pay with spare change for inexpensive pills and take several minutes to gather the money and pay for those prescriptions, that also makes the list of some of the top pet peeves of retail pharmacists. Number 7, the switcher uppers. So this happens when patients demand that their pharmacists fill a brand name drug only to change their mind at the pickup counter when they find out the price and ask for instead a generic. Number 6, the rule breakers. So according to the list, one pet peeve of retail pharmacists was that patients who come through the drive-thru may not have their driver's license on them, which is a bit shocking because if you're driving your vehicle, you should have your driver's license on you. But some patients come through the drive-thru, and when the pharmacist asks you for your driver's license because they need to dispense a controlled medication that requires that type of documentation or verification of identity, you simply don't have it. So that's also something that made the list. Number 5, I call this insurance headaches. Retail pharmacists are reporting that when they're dealing with insurance companies on behalf of patients, whether they're being kept on hold or being switched back and forth from more than one person, or even dealing with insurance changes at the beginning of the year, well, that's a problem. That's a headache. Number 4, how about those sick patients? So I thought it was interesting that one pet peeve of pharmacists is that some patients may approach the counter and let's say they are experiencing kind of allergies or cold and they're sneezing, but yet they don't cover their mouth. That's an annoyance, and it apparently happens more often than not. Pharmacists are also a little bit annoyed when it comes to patients who feel so comfortable with their pharmacist that they show them a rash without warning. Now, I've never experienced that firsthand. I can only imagine that. But I think it's fair to say that most pharmacists expect to encounter sick patients on a daily basis. But these are just some of the annoying things when it comes to these sick patients that do appear at the counter. Number 3, how about those chatty patients? That's right. There's a pet peeve out there that says that pharmacists absolutely can't stand it. Some can't stand it when some patients approach the counter with a quick question, but then chat on and on for 5 to 10 minutes without actually asking a question. And maybe that's a big problem because of my number 2, and that has to do with the one item on the list that I noticed that had nothing really to do with patients or consumers and more so to do with the companies that pharmacists work for. That's right. Apparently, another pet peeve of pharmacists is that they can't stand the fact that corporate is demanding them to fill more and more prescriptions in less and less time. I think it's fair to say that a lot of physician offices can also voice a similar complaint when it comes to trying to see as many patients as you can see in one day with a very crunched amount of time. Speaking of crunchers, my number 1 thing that made my list, at least, in terms of the standouts from this pet peeves of retail pharmacists all across the country, actually had to do with time, and I call the time crunchers. And it made number 1 because I saw more than one pet peeve that all had to relate to the time that it may take to handle a pharmacist's job in relation to how they're also interacting with their patients. So let me actually just break it down specifically. So time crunchers made my top list or top standout because apparently pharmacists find it to be quite annoying when patients are impatient with getting their prescriptions filled. I mean, that makes sense, right? I can only imagine if you're filling tons of medications and you have patients there standing in front of you and they're waiting and asking questions, how that can be quite annoying. They also found that time crunchers, under the time cruncher category, they also noted that when patients come in to get their prescriptions, right after the doctor says it will be ready, and you get there and it's not, that can also be quite annoying. Not enough time to fill the prescription. And also, when patients expect an overnight prescription to be ready as soon as the pharmacy opens the next day, or when the patient comes back in 10 minutes when the pharmacist gave an estimate of 1 hour for the prescription to be ready. So number 1 on the list was time crunchers, and pharmacists really being pressed for time when it comes to dispensing prescriptions, filling those prescriptions, and on the flip side, when it comes to consumers wanting those prescriptions in a very timely manner. Anyway, an interesting list of pet peeves for sure. I always love hearing from the perspective of others in the healthcare industry in terms of how they are dealing with patients and consumers. And I really left leaving that list thinking to myself, can the consumers make things better so that they can have the best relationship with their pharmacists and gain the most out of that relationship, which is actually an essential relationship to have when it comes to any healthcare consumer getting the most out of the busy, demanding U.S. healthcare system. So it's not just about having a good relationship with your physician, your nurse, your physician assistant, your healthcare providers in general, but also with your pharmacists. Because if you think about the drug supply chain, we're talking from research to manufacturing to supplying it to the different outlets to dispense the medications, your pharmacist is the very last person that you're going to see before you take the medication, theoretically, when it comes to the healthcare providers in the drug supply chain. And so your pharmacist and having a good relationship with your pharmacist allows you to have this person in your back pocket to ask questions off of, someone who's going to look out for you as well, and someone who's going to probably respect you a whole lot more if you all have a very good relationship built on trust, built on good communication, built on respect, and built on mutual service across both the patient to pharmacist channels, the pharmacist to patient channels. Thanks for tuning in to episode number 19. I hope you enjoyed the show. Tune in next week for episode number 20. And don't forget to visit our website to listen to more of our shows. You can also check us out on other platforms aside from iTunes and Google Play. And if you want to check us out on Twitter, our Twitter handle is @_overprescribed. Again, that's @_overprescribed. Thanks for listening.